Hey, welcome to Impact Marriage with Nick and Leslie Edwards. We're so honored and glad that you are joining us for another week as we looked at how to impact the lives of men and families and generations, just knowing that each week we have opportunities to get better, take small steps of growth in our faith, and our communication and our expectations, and really small steps to grow in what it means to be more like Christ each day.
Yeah, it was really fun this week after we did kind of that biblical view, the godly wife. I had somebody reach out to me and just say, hey, thank you for doing that it gave her permission to live out that calling, that's something that a lot of women struggle with, is what that looks like, and that really knowing that submission doesn't make you weak gave her the confidence to live in what God has called her to do. So it's so fun when we get to interact and have conversations with people, or you reach out to us and just kind of say, hey, watching, interacting with you and helping me.
It really is encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we want to make sure that we're making an impact. This is called Impact Marriage, that we're impacting your marriage, and being able to give you the strength and the courage to live that faith out is huge for us. And so anything that you send back to us, we are so grateful for it. We are grateful for how you like and subscribe. We're grateful for the financial support that you've already provided for this ministry. It takes a lot just to keep going every month. And so we're grateful for you.
Absolutely. So another thing that happened this week, funny story, we were up late in the middle of the night. Neither one of us could sleep. I don't know if it was like the pressure or the moons, or I don't know what it was, but we were both just up wide awake, which is kind of unusual for us. And so we just started talking through our trip and looking through our trip and looking at all the places that we were going.
Yeah, in October, we're going to, if you're just joining us, in October, we're going on the Steps of Paul tour, which will be visiting different biblical locations where Paul started churches. We're going to go to the places of the 7 churches in Revelation, all throughout Athens, Greece, and Turkey. You can't do any Holy Land tours right now.
No, that's our ultimate goal, but yes.
But really excited about this trip.
Yeah.
And it's a huge thing.
It is a very big thing. It's, it's a time commitment for us. It's, 10 days. It's a financial commitment. It's not a cheap trip, but it's going to be so purposeful. And I really look at this more as a mission opportunity. This is not a vacation. This is this is a mission opportunity, something that we feel like God has called us to do as we go, and in the hopes of leading other groups moving forward and being able to take you guys when at some point when you want to go just on a trip like this. And so it's just been really neat kind of working through those things. But it is a financial commitment, and we would love if you guys wanted to join with us and support both prayerfully, financially. If you feel called to do so, you can click the link there. Any amount is fantastic and helps on the journey as we process through this.
Everything this ministry does is through a nonprofit, Impact 320 Ministries, and this happens because of people just like you who have given, who help support and pay for this type of stuff, and help us continue to impact the lives, whether it's helping people get into counseling, paying for some counseling services for different couples, but all of it's because of your support.
Absolutely.
And so if you're willing to partner with us on this mission trip, this journey that we're going on, it would be a huge blessing. Everything that you give is a tax donation.
Deductible donation.
Tax deductible donation. And so there's a link there for you to give, whether you give $25, $100, or $5,000 towards this trip and this ministry. We are really grateful. Absolutely. And we want to be able to send daily updates on this trip to tell you how to pray for us, to be able to bless you as you've blessed us.
Yeah. It's so cool, the things that we're going to, are so ancient. We don't get a lot of that in America because it's so young, but just seeing the ancient part of it and just knowing that it still impacts what churches do today. Like the reason why churches do things and are called to do things they are today is because of what Paul did in these churches and what he said to these churches. And so I'm really excited. I'm getting more excited about it, just the journey of it and what it's going to be. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, there is a little bit of nervousness of it, just going somewhere new and traveling. But also going, God, what are you going to teach us through this?
Absolutely.
I believe it's just going to bring Scripture to life for us to be able to go, oh, I read this passage. That's what that meant, because you can see it.
Yeah. You can be there. Yeah.
And so that link's there for you to be able to give and to partner with us. Thank you so much. I'll also be sending out some information on what this looks like. Next week, we'll show you a map of all the places we're going, and we'll share that. Maybe we'll take a few minutes to talk about that at the beginning of next week's show.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. So we ready to jump in?
Yeah, it's been, thinking about godly husband, godly wife. We've got a lot of feedback and got some questions out of it on how you deal with some of the old stuff.
Yeah. What if they're not? What happens if they're not? And really kind of one of the questions that came up really prompted us to kind of look at the topic for this week.
So, okay, I would guess that either in your house or someone in your family, someone that you know, is making sourdough bread right now.
There are lots of sourdough bread makers going on right now.
Whether it's sourdough, you're making any kind of bread, you got your bread maker, and you think, you're doing this on a regular basis.
You have your Susie starter in your refrigerator. Yes. They're all named. Did you know that you have to name your starter, apparently? We're not bread makers, but apparently we've heard you have to name your starter.
So in that, it takes this leaven, this starter, right, that you continue to use for all your different loaves of bread. And it has this leaven in it. And that little bit of leaven impacts the entire loaf. Yeah. And Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Corinthians is actually one of the places we're going.
Oh, yes, it is.
He says, your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Cleanse out the old leaven that you may be made new. And you really are unleavened, for Christ our Passover lamb has been sacrificed. Let us therefore celebrate the festival, not with old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And just this little bitty thing that grows throughout this whole loaf of bread, Paul says that this leaven, this old leaven, is malice and evil, and the unleavened bread is sincerity and truth. And I think that's a little bit of what we're talking about today, this little thing that grows.
Yeah.
And it's this resentment and bitterness that grows in our marriage.
It's a great analogy for it because it's so easy to let resentment and unforgiveness and bitterness, and it seems like such a small thing. It only takes a little bit of that to make your bread, to make it kind of bubble up. And that's such a good analogy. Our kids have loved, their aunt is a bread maker, and she would bring them over to their house, and they always thought, that's so cool. Look, it goes from this little deal to the huge deal. And what a great analogy for issues that arise in marriage. Very likely it starts as a small thing. There are some big issues that pop up. Absolutely. For sure. But for the most, it's the small issue that
even the big things probably started with something small.
Absolutely. It starts as this small thing, and it just grows and grows if you don't deal with it and address it. And so that's a really, really great analogy for resentment and bitterness.
Okay, so what would you say is the definition of resentment or bitterness and this conflict that we have in marriage?
So I think this resentment, that's a good question. And that's kind of one of the things that we talked about. It's just this unsettling feeling of I'm just going to continually be frustrated. Like I can't name it. I don't know what it is, but there's just this rustling frustration that is between us. And I think it's when you either have hurt or you have frustrations, you have things that have gone unsaid or that you're just holding on to for different reasons that we'll get into. But it's just this festering of, I don't like what you did, or I don't like this, but I'm not going to address it. I'm just going to hold on to it and just get annoyed by you and just little things like that. I
think the struggle with resentment, bitterness, this root of bitterness that begins to grow, and it really is this root. And as it takes root, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Grows because we think we can control anger and we want control of a situation. So when someone's wronged us, we think if we hold this against them, we gain control.
Yeah.
But it actually gains control of us.
100%. I think there's also an element of pride in it that, I think I can just fix this. I don't need to address, we can just fix this. We're just going to fix it. And I think there's a part of it that's a people pleasing. I think a lot of people that are people pleasing, guilty, totally tell you that sometimes we think it's being peaceable, but it's actually resentment that we don't think through. I think I'm being peaceable because I don't want to bring conflict. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. I don't want to have this conflict. And so I hold on to things in the name of peacemaking, but it doesn't create peace for the marriage. It creates this bitterness if we're not careful. And really, I'm not telling you that every single thing, every single time has to be addressed. Some of it is selfishness that we talked about or things like that. But when you hold on to that, and I think you're doing it in the name of peace, I think you really have to be careful and really evaluate, am I just trying to be peaceable, or am I growing some resentment and bitterness for things that I feel are unjustified or that I'm being unfair in the marriage?
A little bit of the peacemaking is so that you don't have to deal with your own crap.
Absolutely.
So you think you can suppress it. You think you can just push it over to the side. I'll make everybody happy. And it sounds like this honorable thing that I'm sacrificing for everyone.
Yeah.
But that sacrifice comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And it costs you peace.
Yeah.
It costs you joy. It costs you being able to celebrate with the other person. And when you allow this to grow, and you're always giving, you're not actually giving of yourself. You're not actually giving to the person. You're using it to weaponize.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the next part of it. And I think that's why resentment is so dangerous. And I think it's kind of like this lever of it leads to, it's just a thought. You're like, oh, I don't really like that. That's kind of annoying. Or, oh, that kind of hurt my feelings. But you don't address it. And then it keeps happening. And then you're like, well, then you get, do I address it? Do I not address it? And if you don't, it becomes this resentment, which is all emotional to me. Resentment is your thought patterns and what you're doing. But if you're not careful, the danger in it is that, just like it talks about in Hebrews 12, it's a root and it grows, because then what it's going to do is it's going to turn into contempt, which I would tell you.
What's the difference?
Okay, so the difference, resentment is all your emotions. Like, I think these things, I'm frustrated, it's all in my mind. But when it turns to contempt, those are actions that are a result of your resentment. So, those snide little digs that, oh, well, you never do this, or, those snide little digs that you do, or just those little acting out, the silent treatment, the passive aggressiveness, those are all actions that come out of your resentment. So if you don't address, resentment is just kind of the silence, I'm not going to address it. Which
it's internal.
It's all internal, and it doesn't seem dangerous at the time, but the danger is that's going to lead you to act in different ways, which then becomes the biggest problem in your marriage. Like, resentment leads to so many frustrations that don't have to be there.
Well, and then we've talked about this before, that you in every conversation, every relationship that we have, you look through one of two lenses, either trust or doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you allow that resentment, that bitterness to grow, everything begins to going through this lens of doubt. I don't believe you did that for our best. I don't believe you did that for me. I don't believe that you're really loving me. You're just being selfish in this.
Yeah.
Even if they're trying to do the most honorable, selfless thing possible.
Yeah.
You begin looking through this one lens that I can only see things like this.
Yeah. And I think some of the lines that start resentment, some of the biggest telltales of resentment, I'm fine. It's okay. It's no big deal. I'm fine. Like, those are all, and I'm guilty. I'm so guilty of all of those statements.
Every time so a couple of statements. Just calm down has never calmed anybody down.
No one in the history of being frustrated has ever calmed down by being told to calm down.
And I'm fine never means I'm fine.
That's true.
It is saying, I don't want to deal with this with you.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. Is something is bothering me, but I'm either going to push it down because I'm a people pleaser, or I'm a control freak, and so I'm going to control it on my own. I'm going to be able to fix it on my own. But it's really not. And I think that's part of how, kind of leading into it, how you prevent the resentment is by communicating. You have to be able to communicate your wants and needs.
Even this week.
Okay.
So this week you came to us and we were just sitting there watching TV. Everything was good. We weren't in the middle of any issues. And you found the right time when there wasn't any pressure going on. And you said, hey, I want to address this with you.
Yeah.
I don't think you've done anything wrong, but I want to address this way because this makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Before it began to grow, before any root could form, you said, let's deal with this.
Yeah.
And at first I'm like, I didn't do anything.
And I tried to start the conversation by being very clear.
That's exactly what you said. I know you didn't do anything. But then my defense was like, but why are you bringing this up? I didn't do anything. And you're saying, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
I feel this way. Can you help me with this?
Yeah.
And so it went from my pride going, but I didn't do anything, to going, oh, wait, this isn't about me winning. This is about us winning.
Yeah.
And if I fight this, I'm fighting against you, which is fighting against me, which is fighting against us.
And I was able to realize that was an issue for me, because I was realizing I'm starting to think different things when certain things happen or when this comes up. Like, it was a circular thought pattern for me, which allowed me to realize this really is an issue. And so it's a challenge to the people pleasers in us and the conflict avoiders. You have to do it the right way. You know, I have learned in our 20 years of marriage, or 23 years of marriage,
And
how
you
we're
did
doing
it great.
Because, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, in that situation, like, I guess it was Tuesday, maybe Tuesday, so. Monday or Tuesday, that I brought it up to you. It had really started, my thought pattern had been the Thursday before that. So I'm a processor, and I've always said, I want to make sure that I'm in the right with God and with me, and that it's not my issue before I bring it to you. But also, Friday, you went to the deer lease, and so I didn't want to bring it up Thursday night before you left, because I knew how your mind works, and that would cause you. Saturday was crazy. It was Easter weekend. We were at your mom's. Sunday was Easter church. And so it's also part of that. But that's what it was that reminded me is I can feel something different about how I'm thinking in this situation.
You just start to put this lens up.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see things a certain way. And it's these rose-colored glasses, right, that you start looking through this lens. And, you know, you said, I want to check my heart first. I do believe that's important. I think it's incredibly important that you go before God and go, okay, what is going on with me? But that doesn't mean you don't say something.
100%. 100%.
There is a place to check, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm dealing with God with this, but you need to know where I am in this.
Absolutely.
And so that there can be some protection. Now, if you're wondering, it was a little thing, and you did so good on this that it wasn't an issue, but it could have been an issue.
Yeah.
And before it was allowed to grow and become this fester and really grow from just a little bit of frustration to resentment and bitterness to contempt to anger to holding something against me, you said, let's deal with this. And I think that's so important. I think so many marriages struggle with, how do we deal with something and deal with the little things? And does that mean we have to fight over every little thing? Maybe for a while.
And it gets tough for a while. And that's the other part of it, is you responded in an appropriate manner too. So it's this.
No, I didn't want to.
It's not our natural tendency, you know, and the same thing, you have to fight the flesh. If we're being totally honest, dealing with resentment is fighting the flesh, both for holding on and for how we respond when our spouse brings something up. Like, our natural go-to is, well, I'm just a terrible person. I'm a terrible spouse. You don't, and that's all flesh, and that's all Satan attacking us in that, because that was your go-to. And I had prayed through that in that. And so,
and even trying, there was like this battle within me going, how crazy is you're bringing this up and even telling me I'm not wrong?
Yes.
What the heck?
Yes. And so I think it's two ways on that resentment part of it. Is you have to learn to communicate your needs in a godly way, in an honoring way, in a way that respects and shows love. All those things we talked about last week, for the last 2 weeks, for a biblical rule. But I think it's also how you respond when your spouse brings something up, because you can either grow that resentment or you can help resolve that resentment by your response to those things.
And I think at the heart of it is we fail to remember how much God's forgiven us.
100%. That's actually the next verse that we were going to on that.
That we want to hold something against each other, but we don't want God to hold it against us.
Yeah.
And you should forgive me because my motives were right. My actions were maybe wrong, but my motives were right. You should forgive me and overlook that. But why should I overlook your offense?
Yeah.
And Proverbs says it is for your glory to overlook an offense, which means that you are taking the mind of Christ and you are giving grace and mercy and forgiveness when you've been wronged. Yeah. And ultimately, being a godly wife and being a godly husband means that we are modeling Christ in all these things.
Yeah.
So we need to take on the mind of Christ and understand how much we've been forgiven.
Yeah. That's in Matthew 18, the disciples, it's when the disciples say, well, how much should we forgive our brother if he wrongs us, right? And then, is it Paul?
Yes.
I think it's Paul.
No, Peter.
Peter. It's like 7 times, right? Because he's thinking he's being really big because we're one and done, right?
Well, and really the thing was 3.
3.
So he said, not just 3, but I'm going to double it. I'm going to do more.
Oh, yeah. I'm such a great person. Is 7 times I should forgive somebody. And then God's like, no. 70 times 7. And I'm like, what a reminder. I saw.
And it's not 490.
No, it's not 490. Because if you get to 491, no, it's about being in this constant mindset of forgiveness. I saw they did an interview with this couple. I think they'd been married 65 years. And this sweet young couple, newlywed couple that was there, and they were talking back and forth. And they asked, what is the success of your marriage? What has led to this? And they said, forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness.
Over and over and over.
Wow, it's just a reminder. And it's our calling to God, not necessarily, it is a calling to each other, but it's also our calling to God because it is what you said. You realize how much God has forgiven you for.
It's submitting to Christ.
Absolutely. And so I think that's part of it. You prevent resentment by communicating and by receiving it correctly when your spouse brings something up. But once it's already there, the way that you do it is by forgiving. Even though, and this is weird to say in your mindset, in our situation, you hadn't done anything wrong, but it was just a mindset of that. And it didn't sit I had to, in my mind, forgive you and think, you're not doing this to intentionally hurt us or to do something. It's about a constant mindset of forgiveness.
Well, and okay, so whether it was an actual offense and I did something wrong
Absolutely.
and it hurt you, or
because from both of us, that is how,
whether it was the offense or the perceived opportunity for the offense, either way, there has to be a checking of the heart from both people. And we want to understand that we want to take care of an issue before it becomes an issue. And so we don't sweep things under the rug. We don't just let things go. People never get divorced over dirty underwear in the floor and stupid stuff like that. They get divorced because they do not deal with the little things that go, this is how this makes me feel.
Yeah.
And what you did in that is you said, this isn't an offense. It makes me feel this way.
Yeah.
And so will you please help me in this? And this is where really you get to strengthen one another and really build. And the two are one. And if you're hurting, I have to hurt. And if I hurt you, I hurt myself and I hurt us. And just to take on the mind of Christ in this area.
Yeah.
And I think, at 490, you should be pretty good at forgiving. So you shouldn't have an issue with forgiving at that point. And I think it goes to 1 Corinthians 13, this love chapter, love is this and love is this and love is this. But it says, love does not keep record of wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're naive. It doesn't mean you're foolish. It doesn't mean that you allowed a predator in your house. I'm not saying that.
No.
It is, I'm not keeping a record of wrong because I'm no longer holding this offense against you.
To get retribution or to get even with you. The times that people have hurt you, you don't forget those. Or that would be the ideal, to forget that as God does. But it's this, I choose. To me, the biggest thing, I choose to forgive you. Forgiveness is a choice that I get to make to follow how God has called me to lead and also to honor you in that. And it doesn't mean that you didn't hurt me. Choosing to forgive somebody doesn't mean that the hurt doesn't exist. There have been times in us that I have said things that have hurt you, and you said, I will choose to forgive you,
but I'm still hurt.
But I am hurt, and this hurts right now. And just sitting in that, and I have to own that. I have to own that I spoke in a way that hurt you, and not just trying to sweep it under the rug
or rush through it. There still has to be a processing point. I do forgive you. You do forgive me, but I need to work through some of this pain.
The restoration.
Can you help me work through this pain?
Absolutely.
And being able to, it's not just in marriage. It could be with our parents. It could be with someone who's wronged us in life. For years, I led Authentic Manhood, and we just talked about father wound and mother wound and how those issues. And I encouraged men for years, if your dad, maybe he was a good dad, but he wasn't a godly dad. Maybe he was a bad dad. Maybe he was an absent dad, to write a letter And to put it in the mail, maybe your dad no longer lives. Maybe he's passed away. Maybe you haven't seen him in 30, 40 years. You don't even know where he lives. But I had guys who would bring me their letters and say, hey, I don't have any way to get my dad. And I never read them. I just destroyed them and said, this is done. And years later, those guys come back to me and said, that had such a healing thing in my life. And so maybe you need to write a letter, and it doesn't even have to have an address, but you just need to go put it in the post office and drop it in a mailbox. Maybe you need to go have that conversation to say, you wronged me in this, and this. Lay it out.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from the pain.
Right.
Embrace that, but say, I choose to forgive you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's an ex.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an old relationship. Maybe it was a boss. Maybe it was a pastor or a church.
Yeah.
That you need to say, I choose to forgive.
Yeah.
Because I will not allow this to grow within me.
It's good.
And really, the old adage is that bitterness is drinking the poison and thinking that the person's going to die. Yeah. And so you are drinking this poison and it is killing your soul. It's killing your joy. It's killing all the fruits of the Spirit. In Galatians, Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit, this love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. All these things are destroyed by a root of bitterness.
Yeah, so true. So true. You have to prevent it, and then when it's there, you have to deal with it.
And so going back and offering forgiveness, going having a conversation, and it does not matter how that person responds.
That's what I was going to say. That's
marriage,
the hardest part of it.
Be some of this that you receive it, but ultimately saying, hey, will you forgive me in this? I choose to forgive you in this.
Regardless if you're asking for forgiveness or not.
You're not even asking.
Doesn't matter.
I choose to forgive you for this offense because I choose to take on the mind of Christ, and I'm not going to allow this bitterness and anger and frustration to grow in me anymore. And
I think I heard a really cool, as we'll kind of wrap up with this, I heard a really cool illustration of the 70 times 7 when they talked about it, because if you go back and read that context, it's not 70 times 7 offenses. That this person offends me 490 times and I have to offend them. It's for the same offense, because I think Satan knows how our mind works. And it's not like, I forgive you for this. But you know what happened 30 minutes later? I thought about it again. And I said, you know what? God, you give me the power to forgive. You have healed this. You have worked through this, and I choose to forgive. And I praise God for it. And then you know what happened? Like an hour later, I thought of it again. And so I said, you know what, God, I praise you, the fact that you have forgiven me, that I can choose to forgive, that we can move forward. And you know what happened? When Satan knows that you're going to turn it into praise,
stops throwing that bait.
He stops throwing that bait. He throws other bait that's out there. But it's not 490 times that someone offends you. It's 490 times that you forgive them for the one offense.
For that offense.
Because God knows how Satan works in our mind and how it just reiterates and it tries to replay, because that's how Satan gets that foothold in there. And so just choosing to forgive over and over and over, one, because you realize how much you've been forgiven and that it's honoring and it's what God's called us to do.
It really is submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
That's a great tie back.
That the more I submit to Christ, the more gracious, kind, loving, love, joy, peace, patience, all those things, I begin looking more like Christ, which means I exemplify Christ to you, you exemplify Christ to me, I strengthen you, you strengthen me, and I don't allow this to grow. And it just festers, and it gets worse and worse, and it continues to grow until all you can think about is this one pain.
Yeah.
And you're the one handcuffed by it.
It's very true.
So
it's great.
I appreciate you bringing that up to me this week. Those are never easy conversations.
No.
But I appreciate the courage that you had, because that's not an easy thing.
Yep.
Even in the best scenarios, it's not easy.
Yep.
Because Satan wants to control us in these.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for your grace and patience with me through those things.
Well, and you do the same thing for me. You do the exact same thing for me. So, because our goal is to be better. Better is always better. It's not perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect, but we're going to get better in every situation that we encounter. We're going to get better everything that we go through.
Very good. Better is always better, because forgiveness is always better.
That's right.
Have a great week. We'll see you soon.